Welcome to the Eat, Train, Prosper podcast, where we provide you sustainable training principles for strength and building muscle, effective nutrition practices for improving and maintaining a lean physique, and practical lifestyle habits for becoming a champion of your own health, both inside and out. Hosted by Aaron Straker and Bryan Borstein. Happy Tuesday, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Eat, Train, Prosper. Today we have a very good special guest and friend on the podcast, Varner. A little bit of an intro on Anders. Anders is a strength and conditioning coach, a super diesel dad, and the host of the Barbell Shrugged Podcast. Give a little bit of a background for me. I first met Anders and Bryan together when I joined their gym, which was CrossFit Pacific Beach back in the 2012 timeframe. So today's episode is going to be on the book, influential books, people, methodologies, and mentors that we have had over the years that has kind of developed our own principles and philosophies on nutrition and training. So kind of giving a little bit of a brief start and a little bit of from a sentimental note, both Bryan and Anders have been monstrously influential in my own life in training and nutrition. And when looking back on, the things that have really changed the trajectory of my own life, their gym that they used to own, CrossFit Pacific Beach, was one of the single most influential things in my life. What I can say with 100% certainty is the life that I have now would not be the life that I lead without them and the gym that they created. And I just want to kind of kick off the episode with a little bit of gratefulness from me and just appreciation for what you guys created, how important it was in my life, and how it changed, how awesome my life has turned out to be. So
I just got all the chills, dude. I appreciate that. I actually learned a lot from you, especially now too, man. I really appreciate that.
100%. So tell us a little bit more about yourself, AV.
Yeah, man. Who I am now is not who I was, I guess, when we all left the beautiful place of Pacific Beach. I really feel I'm a dude that loves lifting. I love helping people get in shape. I love so much of my purpose in life, I feel like, has been shaped over the last 24 years of training, and that's taken an unbelievable number of twists and turns, and anything from playing sports in high school and finding a weight room to Bryan moving into our house and training in college to finding CrossFit to now like having very few real goals, but creating this kind of like diesel dad platform of like really believing that I have this like larger purpose and big responsibility to just have, create like an education system in my house and a healthy, like passing, I call it the ethical responsibility of being strong, lean, and athletic. Like that's kind of like the tagline of my deeper purpose to all this. And I say it's changed since we were all hanging out because I didn't have a kid when we were last all in the same room banging weights and stuff. And yeah, it's been really weird in the last 3 years since competing in CrossFit, selling the gym, kind of like getting my body back to healthy after many, many years of just beating the crap out of it. And yeah, it's really interesting in that like I have no interest in competing. It's almost like a more soulful journey through training and what that all means and how it aligns with my life and what truly is important to me.
Yeah, totally. Thank you for that very emotional introduction. We appreciate you being here with us, dude.
Yeah.
For anyone that doesn't know our story, Anders and I met in college. We were living across the hall from each other in like 2004, 2003, something like that.
Yeah.
And he became my instant best friend. It was my 21st birthday. 22nd birthday. It was my 22nd birthday.
Yeah.
And he was like, the first day I met him, he's like, all right, let's go. We're getting beers.
It's not my fault. No, it's your birthday. And you said, I'm going to the bar. I was like, I guess I gotta go. I didn't even unload my car. I left all my clothes in the car.
Sorry, I'm the bad influence. I got Anders
Don't
drinking
blame me
for my birthday.
I was the responsible
and
yeah.
right.
Twist my arm. Let's go.
So we did college together. We trained a lot, and I know that some of the kind of training methodologies we used during those times will be discussed here as we go. But we also then reconvened after college 4 years later in San Diego when we started CrossFit PB. And we took a lot of the belief system and philosophies on training and nutrition that we held prior and kind of carried them over into the gym with us, which made our gym extremely unique in a lot of the ways that we approach training. So
totally.
We can get to all of that cool stuff, but I just wanted to kind of provide a little bit of that background. And I think it'd be really cool if we go through this discussion today of these influential figures, books, and people in our lives, and start from the beginning, from when we were in high school, because I know that we all kind of got our start at that point. So, Striker, do you want to kick us off with a little bit of kind of who were your influences and what you learned and from who in the high school days?
Yeah, I will do that. So, training for me started as a kind of a necessary evil of playing football. I went to school in Pennsylvania, 4A school, larger size school. We had a very old school, hard style type coach who was, I don't know, probably in his like late 60s or whatever. He was this terrifying man who just like commanded, respect and presence when he would be around. So anything he said, like you just kind of did. And I'll share like a very quick story. So football was like a back burner sport for me, and basketball was my primary sport. And one day he kind of pulled me aside and was like, hey, I think it would be best if you stopped, playing basketball and just started playing football.
You're better at running people over than shooting jumpers?
Yeah. And I was like, 15 at the time. I'm in like 10th grade, and I was like, oh, okay. And like, yeah, that was it. Basketball was done. Like, I don't play basketball anymore. And what it really was is so that we could lift, 9 months out of the year when we weren't playing football, and put weight on to play football. And I was just, very fortunate in those like formative years where we had 2 to 3 coaches in the weight room, like, supervising us, right? And then there's like a parent, I don't know, a PTO. I don't know if that's the correct word, but we had like they would basically pool money to buy us like protein powder and peanut butter and jellies and like feed us for us to put on weight. So those were like my formative years of like, hey, we learned how to squat. Fortunately, we didn't learn how to deadlift until like the end of my junior year, which probably saved a lot of our, spines. But we had like real programming. We had our sheets that we had to fill out and submit every single day. And that was very, very, I think, great in my formative years, especially around that age when I could have been doing God knows what after school. But 9 months out of the year, all through summer, 10 a.m., Monday through Saturday, I was at the weight room for football, or lifting weights for football. So that would definitely be like my first very solid influence there in those years.
Yeah. What about you, Anders?
Yeah. Man, I started lifting with when I was 13, basically just because like I was gonna die. I was like leaving home to go play ice hockey in Massachusetts. I was going to boarding school. I hadn't hit puberty. I was really, really little. The interesting thing about like high school training for me is like I did it, but it's really easy, especially like a couple decades into this now, like to over glorify what was really going on. And I think this is something that like I have started to, just as I've more objectively viewed like the early years and like kind of like how you get to 24 years of doing the same freaking back squat every Monday of your life and like why it still matters. Those early days were really awkward. They were really like I was a chubby little 13-year-old that hadn't really lifted weights, hadn't hit puberty, didn't have a freaking hair on his body, and was trying to just like do what I thought was right so that I could just survive. Like nobody, and I was lucky enough that my dad used to go to the gym of the strength coach of the wrestling team, which is actually, it's like a really famous, well, maybe not really famous, but famous enough. Ben Smith is actually where he started lifting weights too. And like all those old videos of him training around the track, like that was like day one, the coach was like, go put a barbell on your back and do a 400-meter lunge with a barbell on your back as a 13-year-old. It took me like forever. I didn't walk for a week. Like it was just, there just wasn't like a, you know, in the clumsiest possible way was how I stumbled into this. And then when school would start, like I would go to the weight room, but also I was really timid and shy and had like normal 13-year-old insecurities, 14-year-old insecurities. Like there's seniors around, and there's girls, like the girls become a thing, and you don't like, you kind of, there was, I do remember like many times just being like wondering if me going to the gym meant that I was like admitting that I was like a chubby 14-year-old. Like, am I only doing this because I'm not like skinny, or I'm like a thicker kid than other people? Like, am I being judged because I go run, or, you know, like all of those insecurities in high school. But there was something about lifting weights that kept me coming back, which I think is probably just like if there's, man, if there's like a lesson from 14 years old that still applies 24 years later, it's like there's like a weird obsession that of coming back to it, and it becoming a center point of like, you just go. It's hard and you just keep doing it. But it was definitely really clumsy. There wasn't a ton of people. There was no internet. There wasn't like a huge, I would say like most of the stuff I was doing, although in some context could be seen as the right way to do it, I don't think that I would put some 14-year-old on that same program today.
Totally. I think one of the interesting things that you said is that, you know, you kept coming back. And I think that there's a bit of a selection bias when it comes to people that train, because if you went to the gym and you just got no results and nothing happened, you would find other things to do in your life that would produce better results for you in the long term. But you went to the gym and like something was happening, like you were noticing things were changing, and that brought you back into the gym some more, right?
What's interesting is like the summer before I met you was the first time I actually feel like I really noticed changes in my body. And that was, like I said, it's like an over glorification of what I was actually doing, because it's like there was two worlds, right? There was like the world of like, you have to go to the weight room to get better at hockey, but all I cared about was hockey. It wasn't like my sport was getting strong. My sport was to go play ice hockey. So the weight room, as many people probably feel in their lives, was like this annoying thing that I had to do. Yet it was still a place that I was interested in going. I went with my dad during the summers. Like there was like a unifying theme that I just continually came back to, and I knew that it was there. I bring up that summer before I met you because I was in college, and like a lot of those insecurities about girls and like things are just still in your life when you're 18, 19 years old. And like we'd go to the gym and we would do what we were supposed to do, but I never like I shouldn't say never. I wasn't fully committed to the life until I interned in DC that summer, and I quickly realized like, you're in college, you're partying for 9 months of the year. And then that summer I had an internship in DC in which I quickly realized that I have two options. I can go do the intern happy hour scene in DC, and instead of going from 9 months of partying, now I'm doing a full year. Like I'm going to go like 24 straight months of partying with no downtime and like no direction. I'm going to burn through all my money that I'm getting throughout the summer, which is supposed to last. And I made a very conscious decision to not do that and go to Gold's Gym, which was in Falls Church right next to where I worked. And that was the first summer that I started learning about nutrition. Nutrition up until that point was my dad literally just telling me to eat as much fried chicken. Like he would make fried chicken so that I liked it, because I was not going to sit there and he would shove chicken breasts down my throat until it hit a point where I was like, Dad, I'm not doing this. And then it was peanut butter and jelly was the next one because I would just keep eating. And then he got to a point towards the end of my high school career where it was um, like he would fry chicken because it was the only way I was going to like really eat all the protein that he wanted me to eat. So that's what my like steady summer diet was peanut butter and jelly and fried chicken. And when you're 16 years old,
You
you can just eat whatever you want. It doesn't really matter.
you should have just gone on the GOMAD diet, man. Just the easiest way to get calories.
Yeah. So like that was like something that didn't really, all of that stuff didn't. So when I was training at Gold's that summer, I got really into it, and it was because it was a personal choice. Nobody told me that I had to do it. And that was like a massive leap forward in the commitment to becoming good at it. It really wasn't until I had like 5-6 years of training before I made this like personal commitment to go do it and be good at it. And then when I met Bryan, when I met you, like that was the massive turning point because it was like, oh, when you're 18 years old, very few people, I mean, even today at 37, like very few people are genuinely interested in being good at things, much less being good at lifting weights. It's like one of the reasons I have such a hard time finding friends because like I have dudes are dragon slayers. This is like my theory on men. We wake up in the morning to go slay dragons. We go hunt. And for many years of life, that's like we hunt girls, we hunt weights, we just hunt things. We hunt business. We have to go find big mountains and go climb them because there's something inside us that says that that's important. And it's really challenging to find people that want to go climb the same mountains and slay the same dragons and do all that stuff with you because it's really hard. And when I meet people that are slaying their own dragons, I find their dragon to be stupid. I don't want to climb your hill with you because your hill is little and it does nothing to do with getting super jacked. And I struggle to find friends because of that. And when you're 18 and people are partying, very few people want to go to the gym with you and genuinely train hard. So when I made the personal commitment that summer to like, okay, I've been doing this thing for, 4 or 5 years, 6 years by myself now, like maybe I'll just go get strong and I'm going to go do it on my own. No one's going to be there with me. But then to find Bryan and actually find somebody else that wanted to go slay dragons like I did, it was like, holy shit. And on top of that, he had already been in internet forums and like had written a book and like put all these like thoughts together about training and been doing research and like was light years ahead of where I was in what was actually going on. That was like a giant turning point when I realized like you don't just get good at it by like showing up. You get really good at it by showing up and learning and eating. And that was really when like the Body for Life stuff started to show up because you had done that and we were like roughly doing that training program. And like when you introduced me to 20 rep back squats and like, just because you had all these books and knowledge and been talking to people on chat forums, that was like the first time I had ever met somebody that was like genuinely interested in slaying the same dragons as me. Like it's so hard even in today's world where everybody knows fitness is a thing and all this stuff, but like it's really challenging to find people that like want to get up and go get after it in the gym. And like some people work out, that's cute and all, but like do you really want to like see who's the strongest today? Like that's a big difference.
Yeah. No, that's all really interesting. I think it cues me up perfectly to talk about kind of some of my early years, and some of the things that you already brought up, like 20 rep squats and the Body for Life challenge. So let's just backtrack a teeny little bit to little Bryan, who resembles a lot of like little Anders when he first started. Pre-puberty, short white kid, a little bit round just because he hadn't grown tall yet,
Yeah.
and we're just trying to figure it out.
I still haven't
So
grown tall.
as you kind of yeah. So the first place that I stumbled onto when it came to training was not, the big muscle mags telling you to do 25 sets of body part one time a week. I stumbled onto a couple of forums, a hard gainer forum and a hit forum. And a lot of people, if you know anything about either hard gainer or hit, assume that they're more or less the same thing or really similar. And they are, in the sense that they're both kind of considered abbreviated training. But specifically, hit methodology is usually one set to failure for a number of different exercises. So you might do 12 to 15 different exercises, hitting the muscle from every angle. It's a little bit more kind of bodybuilding specific because of that aspect. And then in hard gainer, they're more about, sticking just to compound movements, not wasting any time and energy on any isolation stuff. Really just hitting like a push, a pull, and a hip movement on one day, and then resting a few days, and then hitting another day with a push, a pull, and a hip movement. So the interesting part about finding this as kind of like my first introduction into training is that when you're not given a lot of work to do, and it's abbreviated in a sense, is that it instills in you this kind of necessity to utilize effort. Because you're like, okay, I have, either one set of all these movements or 3 sets of bench press or something like that. If you don't take each set to the house and work as hard as you possibly can on those sets, then what are you really going to get out of it? And I think that I kind of naturally felt that balance as it was happening. And then that kind of progressed into the John McCollum stuff. So when Anders and I owned the CrossFit gym, I introduced him to a book called Keys to Progress by a guy named John McCollum. And John McCollum wrote a series for a magazine called Strength and Health, which was kind of the bodybuilding magazine back in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. It was owned and run by a guy named Bob Hoffman, who I think he owned York Barbell, but he definitely owned a supplement company back in the 1950s. And so John McCollum wrote these articles, and his book, Keys to Progress, was these articles basically taken out of this magazine chronologically and put into this book. So it takes you all the way from the very beginning of training, where it's like a 2 or 3 times a week full body routine with 20 rep breathing back squats and all the other big compound movements. And then it gradually takes you through years and years of training where you need to like specialize in arms and back, and you need to specialize in like legs and hamstrings or quads and hamstrings and all these different things. And he tells the story in such a cool way, because instead of him just like putting all these facts on paper and making it feel like a nonfiction book, he tells it as like he's the gym owner and these people are coming to him with these problems. So each story that he tells is like a theoretical story or a hypothetical story that he told some 25-year-old kid that walked into his gym and had been training 6 years and now needs to specialize on arms and back. And it's like a really cool way because it integrates fiction into kind of nonfiction and teaches these in a very interesting manner. So those were really like the first like high school years of training. And it wasn't until later in high school, maybe like 11th, 12th grade, that I actually ended up jumping into the Body for Life and the muscle media and got into a little bit more of like what would be typical bodybuilding style training. So before I get into that, let's pass this thing off to Straker. Have you talk a little bit about your college years, and then when we circle back to me, we can cover a bit more. Anders and I can kind of go back and forth a little bit on some of the Body for Life stuff.
Yeah, so what's definitely interesting with me is my college training was very abysmal. I partied really hard. That's what college was. I think the gym really became something that I thought I was still supposed to do, but it was really challenging for me to stay motivated. And I mean, I still went 4 or 5 days a week, like religiously, but I wouldn't say I really enjoyed it or made much progress through much of college. I had like 1 year where I had older roommates that we would like get together and lift. But after that, I mean, that was after like from like my junior and senior years of college were probably some of the worst training years of my entire adult life, to be completely honest. And then that's kind of what pushed me into CrossFit as I was graduating. So yeah, not much for me to share there, unfortunately.
Yeah, dude, college was rad. Like, I think that was, the first couple years were probably pretty, I mean, it was just spotty it really wasn't until I made that like real commitment to myself that I was going to go do this. But what was really cool about once that happened is like, because I played ice hockey, which is a pretty physical sport, and the fact that you're just on your legs all the time. And I think I squatted 315 when I was like a sophomore or junior, probably a junior in high school that summer going into my senior year. Like and this was like what was so rad about CrossFit in the early days when just nobody was doing it, was like I was the strongest person in every CrossFit gym that I walked into because nobody was training legs ever. Like before 2010, before like 2009, like nobody in this country was doing legs. Now people squat all the time. Like there was like one squat rack at our whole college. Like I don't even remember. I don't even know. I couldn't even tell you where the squat rack was at James Madison. But like nobody did that stuff. So, and even when we got out of school, I remember doing legs way more than everybody. Just, it was like the only way I really knew how to work out. But yeah, college, the first couple years of college were just a lot of fun. And then once I was able to like, it's not like I stopped partying by any means, but those years are a little bit goes a long ways when you got the special juice going in your body too.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to go back and train really, really hard and not party, but also I would have missed out on a few other things.
Anders, do you remember training at all? So I know we did Body for Life stuff a lot, especially the conditioning circuit. For anyone that doesn't know, the conditioning circuit was...
I still do that workout all the time.
It's 17 minutes is dope. So you basically, we used it based on a treadmill setting, but the idea is that you do a minute at a RPE 6, a minute at 7, a minute at 8, a minute at 9, and you do that 4 times. And then after the 4th round, so you're 16 minutes in, then you do a 17th minute where you do 1 minute at RPE 10. And for whatever reason, that always lined up with the treadmill. So I'd go like 6.0, 7.0, 8.0, 9.0, and then at the very end do a 10.0 for a minute. I'm pretty sure I couldn't do that anymore. But is that the way you implemented it too?
Oh yeah, it was like whatever 7 to 10 were the intervals. 10 was getting after it pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't remember what I used to do, but yeah, that's what I do now. Anytime I'm at a hotel that has no equipment, that's like the workout. That's
so that was the...
I do it multiple times a year just because of that.
Nice. So that was like the cardio component to the Body for Life challenge. Essentially what Body for Life was it was a program created by a guy named Bill Phillips, which Anders had actually had him on his podcast before. And you have, right? Am I making that up?
They had him on before I got there.
Gotcha. Okay.
When him and Corey G were doing stuff together.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it's funny. Bill Phillips actually lives in Golden, Colorado, which is like 20 minutes away from me.
Yeah.
But anyway, originally he started a magazine in the 1990s called Muscle Media 2000. And they were kind of like the more moderate training volume magazine. Like they weren't promoting, like Flex Magazine and Muscle and Fitness, where they had these big contracts with like the biggest bodybuilders, and they were promoting like all the like DHEA and like testosterone boosters and stuff like that. Muscle Media was more like I want to be as big as I can get naturally, and maybe some of them were on drugs, but they didn't look like overwhelmingly large. It was more relatable. So I really enjoyed both the training routines that they put out, as well as just kind of the methodology that they represented overall. And a lot of their training was reasonable volume wise. Like it wasn't 25 sets in a session type thing. It was like bench press 10-8-6-4, and then maybe incline bench 10-8-6-4, and then maybe you throw like a superset at the end of the incline bench. So you're getting like 8 or 9 sets or something like that. It was pretty reasonable, and you would do that. It was a bro split, so you'd hit each muscle group once a week. But I remember doing a lot of that type of stuff with you, Anders. But I look back at my training logs from like through college and post college, and I would say that like the majority of what I see is actually periods of time training the Max OT style. Do you remember doing Max OT with me as well?
Dude, I don't really remember any. This is like the interesting thing about, I don't remember any of the specific training that we ever did. In fact, I remember like the biggest thing I remember is doing arms every Friday morning after a big long Thursday night in sandals. Those are like, that's truly like the only, most of that stuff was such like a learning phase, and I was just following whatever you were doing. So it wasn't a lot of thinking on my side. It was like, whatever you did, I just did with you. Like you were coach, and you
Nice.
like I was just like deferring to the guy that actually knew what was going on, because I had never really thought about training and writing my own program at all.
Gotcha.
But yeah, Body for Life was, what's actually interesting is like the first time that we got off the same programs, and it's super interesting how this kind of like played out, is like I remember searching for more, like I remember doing basically CrossFit but on machines for that was like the first time I had like really found like high intensity. I found it on, I want to say it was like early days of T Nation or bodybuilding.com, and they were like, it was like 1 minute intervals, 1 minute rest, like max reps in that minute, and doing it with like lat pull downs and machine rows, like the Cybex rows in my apartment. And it was like a 15-20 minute long thing, minute on, minute off, and doing that for a while. And like yeah, those early days of training, like I think that's why the Body for Life thing like still comes up in my life, because that was like the workout for conditioning that we did all the time. And if we weren't doing it like I also remember doing a lot of incline dumbbell press with the hundreds, just because we could. No one else could. It's the best. Do you remember there was a guy at the Gold's Gym, and him and his girlfriend were like the most jacked people in the Golds in Clarendon.
Yeah.
And they were the only people, and they're still, I don't know who they are now or any of that, but dude, there was just so few people really training hard, even in that gym where there was like a lot of in shape people.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember really like you basically wrote the training program for our house at all times.
Yeah, so it's weird because Max OT is like the most prominent in my mind of all the things that we did in like college.
I don't
and
even think
post-college.
I've ever even heard of that.
So you'll probably remember it when I talk about it, but basically it's like a bro split. So we would always do, chest on Monday, back on Tuesday, shoulders on Wednesday, arms on Friday, and then I think there was like a leg day on Thursday or Saturday that I skipped probably half the time. Like I don't remember doing legs a whole lot in college, but the reason that I think that's the program we were doing all the time is because that program specifically has you primarily hanging out in like the 4 to 8 rep range for pretty much every movement.
Yeah.
So that's why we would use the hundreds for like the incline press and the 85s for the shoulder press.
Yeah.
And we would be able to lift these like really heavy weights because the rep ranges were pretty low.
I remember we did a lot of pyramids, like 10-8-6-4s.
That was the Body for Life influence. So that was the stuff. That was the other thing we did during that time. So Max OT was like straight sets of heavy shit. And then we also would mix that up with like 10-8-6-4 or like 12-10-8-6. And we would do stuff like that. I remember doing more of that for like arms.
So it's so funny that you remember the names of these things, because like first off, there weren't that many training programs out. Like there was like there just weren't that many ways to train, and when you found an actual program, like you could like stamp your name on it. Now I feel like if somebody like puts a program out and they like stamp their name on it, I look at them like, oh, well, that's like all these other 50 million programs out here that just it just means you're like doing it right. You can't put your stamp on that. That shit was done. I was doing that 15 years
Right.
ago.
Everything's already been done.
I think that's like the idea that like 10864 comes from Body for Life. It's like, well, yeah, it also comes from like
No, well,
a
Arnold
bazillion
and
other
Franco
people. Yeah,
and
like
no,
that.
no, no. For
All
sure,
those
for
all
sure.
those methodologies now are like so blended together, and because the only reason I feel like we remember them is because they were just the first ones that we attached ourselves to.
For sure, for sure, for sure. Yeah, and I mean, the Body for Life stuff is also like tied in with the influence of like the routines that I would see on that body of work video that we watched from Bill Phillips, where those guys
Run
would talk
around
about like
Times
what they were
Square
doing
as
in the
underwear.
gym. Exactly. That's always what I remember from that video. It was a transformation challenge for anyone that doesn't know what we're talking about. It was
The
basically
first
a Body for Life
one.
transformation
The
challenge.
guy cleaned
So it was the first
house.
one. It was called Body of Work before they changed the name to Body for Life. So if you ever want to watch an old VHS, I think I still have it.
I have the book right there. I have Body for Life book right there.
Nice. I have it too. So the cool thing I think, and just to kind of put a bow on like the high school and college years, is that the way that we trained, I think all three of us, is that we trained hard. We pretty much went to failure. We focused on adding weight to the bar no matter what. And I don't think that we followed like excessively high volume programs that completely drained us. We mostly just went in, did some good fucking hard work, and got out of the gym and went on with life. So I think that those were really important lessons that we've taken with us throughout the years through the CrossFit gym and then beyond the CrossFit gym, which I think brings us beautifully into kind of the CrossFit days. If you want to talk a little bit about kind of your experience there, Straker.
Yeah, I'll keep mine a little bit short here too. So immediately, kind of, if you remember back to what I was saying, like my senior year in college, I was really just kind of over the Globo gym, college gym scene. I just was like very unmotivated to go lift. I was only doing it because it was something I had always done. I saw a video from a friend in high school, and they were doing like box jumps and kettlebell swings, and it was all this like high intensity stuff. And I was like, bro, what is this? And this is in like 2009, right? And he messaged me, he's like, hey, it's this thing called like CrossFit. When you come back from school, like we'll do it. And what I think's like really cool is back in, I mean, we're like, not super, super OG, but like OG CrossFit people, right? And it's what's really wild is what a lot of those people have turned into. So long story short, right, I go back to my hometown. My hometown is Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. There's a guy running a local CrossFit gym there. That guy is Mike Abgarian. So who's like gone on to be in the games multiple times, gyms like, East Coast, West Coast type of deal. So that was my intro to CrossFit, and I completely, got smoked and thought I was going to vomit and die, and said, well, fuck that. I'm never going back there again. And then, Monday I walked in again. And then that was, like 60 days before I moved to San Diego, joined the local gym there, and was really into the CrossFit methodology at that time, which was like the hopper. We literally had a hopper with balls and numbers, and we would just like pick a random workout and do it. And then that was fun. And then I, realized one day that I was 178 pounds at 5'11", which is like, pretty much skin and bones for me. And was like, oh, maybe I need to start like lifting weights again and not just like running around and doing kettlebell swings and stuff. And then someone was like, oh, well, if you want to like lift weights and get good at CrossFit, there's two places you can go: Invictus, or if you want to get jacked, you go to CrossFit PB. And then that was at like one of the local competitions in like Orange County, and you guys were there with like Loden and Pitts, and you guys were like significantly larger than everyone else. And I was like, I'm going to go to CrossFit PB. And then that like, next February or whatever, after I moved, I walked into the CrossFit PB doors, and there was Anders, super high energy yelling. And it was like, the music was blasting, and that was like my introduction to that. And it was, I sucked. I was really, really weak. And that was like my introduction there. And then from there, I was in what ended up being like literally the glory days of lifting weights for like the next 4.5 years. And
yeah, dude, CrossFit was wild. It's super interesting because I still, I say this whether I know the exact numbers or not, of like when I found it in 2006, I really feel like I was inside like the first 1,000 people. Like people actually like posted scores because people only followed what was on .com at the time, and that was like everyone's training program. And you would always go onto the message boards and like write your times in to see who was in there, and like OPT was crushing it, and AFT, and all these. There was this group of dudes that were just total savages. Like Nicole Carroll was still training hard and doing all this, but like, those things that drew me to CrossFit are still the things that um, I really look for in what keeps me going in training. Like the what's super interesting about the early days of CrossFit and why people were so mad is they were like, this is not right. This is not how you're supposed to train. And so much of like what I cared about didn't matter if it was right or wrong. I just wanted to play sports. And I hated the idea that the only sports you could play as an adult were like kickball. I was like, dude, I'm like a real athlete. I do not go play kickball. I am not. I feel like I have more to offer to life than like rec kickball. And when CrossFit hit, it was like a bloodbath every day. It was like exactly what I wanted to do. Now, I don't need a bloodbath in my life right now, but though like the idea of CrossFit is so rad, and like you get in, you hit it hard, you go home. And I mean, I right now I probably train a total of 90 minutes a week, like 30-minute sessions. And I run 2 supersets and maybe an accessory piece at the end, and I'm out. And it's in, I get it done, and I go home. Like still to this day, CrossFit has probably shaped the majority of, not just because like it's in, it's quick, it's done. It's like it's like the level of intensity and athleticism almost that I really enjoy about training, and that you feel like you're playing versus like training. And that's what I like. As soon as we all got to go to the gym together and like race, that's way cooler to me than just training. I want to race every day. Like if there were more people, if there were more like adults in my neighborhood that could actually go run a race, or like wanted to truly find out if they were faster than me, I would totally race them. That would be my training program still. It's just now I'm a little more, I have less energy to go play CrossFit specific stuff because I don't value that education. I took that game to the end, but that still is like the motivating factor. Like I I don't I purely train so I can go run around outside and like play games and like chase Adelaide down the street. Like that's the only, like I still feel like I'm an athlete. I just don't. The gym is just where I enjoy being, because most of the time there isn't a game to go play.
You're like the guy that goes to fight the dragon and just runs like right at him and is like, I got this shit.
Yeah, well, dude, I actually, there's an interesting vision that I have in my head, right? And this could be like a dream that I had when I was a kid that stuck with me. It could be totally fabricated and not even a real thing. But I remember being at a track, and I know I have like a vision of the exact track that I know that I was at, what had happened, and there being just an older dude, because I was supposed to be like running for hockey, and I was in high school, and there being an old dude by himself with his shirt off in the middle of the winter running wind sprints with nobody around. And something about like that moment of like, that dude's just like this old savage dude that just is like soulfully out there just in the winter with his shirt off just grinding. And I don't know why that image has stuck with me, and like why that like moment, but that's who I really envision myself to be as in the many years of training and getting after, is like um I don't want to go. I if at any point in time, if we were all in the room and we lined up on the fence and we were like, yo, I'll race you to the end of the street, like, let's go. That's like what I want to do. That's what I view fitness as. And CrossFit was like that thing. And unfortunately, like the older we get and the further away from our like warrior years, those moments are harder and harder to find. And I think that's one of the coolest parts about like where I'm at now, of like the most dad human being, but like I have kids to go play with again. And like I'm like the dad that's out in the street right now, like while all the other parents are like sitting around talking about parent shit, I'm the dude with like 9 kids around trying to play a game and kick soccer balls and like race them. Like it's just, I want to be a little kid.
Yeah.
Go play games.
I feel like the beginning of our time in CrossFit was like you're describing. It was like this animalistic, just like attack everything, be the alpha male, go win shit. And then I think it was about a year and a half or 2 in when we found OPEX, or what was Optimum Training Performance at the time, OPT. And that kind of was the science that I've always kind of found myself, you know, leaning towards and working towards my whole life. I feel like it's been the science that has always kept me kind of excited and motivated to discover new things and test hypotheses and all these different things. So I was able to take a lot of the things that we were practicing in CrossFit in our gym on a daily basis, like some of the things like that we came up with that other gyms weren't doing, like the whole notion of pacing and, you know, the triple Fran at the OCT being a perfect example of that, where you had to do a Fran every 5 minutes and your score was the worst Fran. Yeah. But people just weren't doing that at the time. So we throw this event into the competition and 90% of the people just go ham on the first Fran and then die, and their worst Fran is not finishing. And then you have someone like Fisher, who was being coached by us at the time, and we're like, okay, dude, you just need to go like 330, 330, 330 and just keep knocking off 330 Frans.
It was so savage.
And that's what he did. So I think that like OPEX and, you know, that being the big influence that kind of ran me throughout those critical years of CrossFit and building our gym. And educating our coaches that then transferred into the way that we teach movement and the way that we taught movement, and also the way that we implemented our programming and our class structure and a number of these different things that we kind of refined and formulated over the years as we grew.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super interesting because like even when you went through that, it's so just like a personality thing. Like so much of me just like didn't even want to think about all that stuff to that level. Like I really just like playing the game. I mean, when the open came around and like understanding timing and watching the clock in the middle of rounds and like practicing movement and understanding how long it takes to do muscle ups and all that stuff, but like I know that I could have been better. Maybe, well, who cares? You go from like 20th to 11th, like who gives a shit? But like yeah, like I don't know. It's super interesting because like so much of that stuff was your brain and how you coached people and how you like dug into all that, where like the thing that motivated me was like standing next to you guys and just talking shit until I had to back it up and then having fun. Like the number of times that like Loden would walk into the gym and I would just ride him for an hour until we turned the clock on, and then it just like, let's go. Like
it just happens.
Yeah. Like it's really interesting because, I mean, even in my training now, like I train 7 days a week. I'm under the bar like maybe 90 minutes total during the week, but I train. I actually counted the other day that if you were to consider like non-exercise walking and things like that, like I accumulate roughly like 40 sessions a week, and all of them are under 20 minutes long. There's only 1 day a week that I really train longer or for any more consistency than, or a larger amount of time than 20 minutes, and that's maybe 35 when I go for like a 4 to 5 mile run, depending upon like how far I actually go. And like all of that stuff, just like I feel like there's a lot of like the energy system work that I get, and I pay attention to it, and I know it's there, but I'm like, I want to go short, so I go to the track and I run really fast 1 day a week, and then I like lifting weights, so I get strong, and I know that I should be doing like threes, and those are like really good for like myofibrillar hypertrophy, and then like 8s to 12s are really good for like some, but look, all that stuff. This is like my. I just wrote an article about this actually to our email list. It's like, no matter what you do and no matter how much you learn, being strong is the only thing that matters. Like, it doesn't matter if you want to do something for 20 reps and you want to talk about sarcoplasmic blah blah blah. No, if you can't be strong in that rep range, it doesn't matter. If you can't be strong at 12s, it doesn't matter. If you can't be strong at 1s, it doesn't matter. You're not doing the thing. So in the end, the guy that's brutally strong is going to win. The guy that can go run and manage that pace is going to win. The guy that can go sprint is going to win. And I just like going to play all those games. And the way that I get really fired up to do it is leaving Bryan to be smart and me talking shit and getting people motivated to get down.
Well, I think that's awesome, and I think that it actually speaks to part of why we had so much success in the early and mid years of owning the gym, because we each had our role and we each played our role really well. And you know, as much as I was an influential figure in your kind of training and nutrition, or probably more training development over the years, and I had more of that like sciencey brain for the evidence and for figuring out the nuance of training. You were always a little bit ahead of me on the business savvy and a lot of the things that you were proposing and talking about, and really just interested in more in the CrossFit years are the things that I find myself kind of interested in now, because it's something that I haven't really focused on as much. But that was the thing that kind of you specialized in and was your milkshake in those years. And so I think it's cool that we balance each other really well in that way.
Yeah, I mean, the gym was just so rad. Like, dude, it was, I don't know. When I tell people about CrossFit PB, dude, Hammer hit me up the other day. He was like, do people still train like that? And I'm like,
yeah.
I don't care what year it is. I don't care where you're at. There's always going to be some 27-year-old with a giant ego that has no girlfriend that's trying to prove to the world that they're the strongest person. And they're out there trying to kill themselves under a barbell. We were just other people. But like especially being in Apex, North Carolina, which is a beautiful little suburb of Raleigh, like, yo, when I walk around, I'm like, look, I drove a golf cart for 3 years to work. I had a gym that cost it was like a used car payment every single month. We had to go walk to the beach a whole 3 blocks. And John Cena was our training partner. And every once in a while, Dierks Bentley would walk in and drop backstage passes on us every year. Like,
yep.
The shit was crazy. And we pumped out 75-something regional people. It was crazy. Like, it was gnarly times. It was just so rad. You could go run down to the beach and go surf in the middle of the day for no reason. I didn't know that was possible. Strength conditioning is so radical that you get to go do stuff like this.
No, for sure. We had some amazing experiences in those days, and I find myself a little bit nostalgic about them, but also very happy where we all are in our lives. And I think that you know, I'd like to send this over to Straker here to talk a little bit about kind of some of your current influences since leaving CrossFit and some of the people that have kind of helped you define your philosophy in the last couple of years.
Yeah, so I think that's a perfect segue to take the conversation, is I know we all started kind of transitioning out around the same kind of times. And for me, what I really remember most was AV that year we competed at regionals when we were on the team together. That is when it hit me where I was like, you know what? Like I reached my pinnacle, right? I was like, I'm not going to get any better than this. You know, it's Southern California. I'm on the regionals floor. Like I've had the best performance, I realistically will. And I don't want to do this anymore. And it kind of hit me there. I was like, I just don't have any more goals. I don't feel like my goals are to get stronger and get bigger. And I've learned enough that CrossFit's just not the best, medium for reaching those goals. And, immediately upon that being over, I transitioned into, more powerlifting and Olympic weightlifting.
Yeah.
And then that kind of changed, to follow into what Bryan was saying, my kind of information sources, right? So what was really cool at that time was Juggernaut was becoming like, a really big, information and education source in that space. And then kind of right alongside them was Renaissance Periodization and Dr. Mike Israetel. This is like, mid 2014. So those were like those sources I moved into there. And that was really cool from that training aspect. And then right around that time is when our, friend and who was a coach at the gym, Jen Ryan, started getting into nutrition coaching. And look what we do now, that is, completely, again, changed the trajectory of my life. But those were my new information sources primarily. Yeah. And then as I had come off of that big injury, right before that regionals year, I had a lot of downtime that I spent like learning a little bit more. So I would say at that, the 2015 range of me transitioning into focusing on getting stronger and learning more about nutrition, like Jen Ryan was very instrumental in that, as alongside, Juggernaut. And that was a little bit more science stuff, which again, knowing what we know now, me and Bryan, of course, together tend to really kind of lean towards that side. Totally. And then RP with just stuff on nutrition that I had never even heard of at the time.
Yeah. Dude, I try not to learn from people anymore, which sounds really weird. No, that's super real. I've unfollowed everyone on Instagram, mainly because I talk to these people in real conversations, and the online piece of it really seems so it's like a part that I'm uninterested in the snippet. When after you have like a long conversation with somebody about the thing that they're the best at, I'm in like a really weird spot where like I can just hang out with Galpin and do shows with him whenever. And like the number of people, and you guys will have all these people on your show as well, like it's been really weird, but it also has like distorted the fact of like you take all these like insanely smart people that spend all this time studying this thing their whole life and like condense it into like one giant conversation and like mash it all together, and you start to get this like really clear picture of like being strong really matters. Like being strong and having the ability to build and keep muscle is like a giant piece of the puzzle of life. Like in today's world of us being able to be active humans that are capable of doing stuff, muscle is mandatory. When it comes to metabolic health, muscle is mandatory. When it comes to aging well, muscle is mandatory. When it comes to brain health and the ability to, like we interviewed Dr. John Rady, who studies, he wrote the book Spark, and talking about basically like how old brain and new brain talk to each other, and how your body or the BDNF protein in your brain literally like lifting weights makes you smarter because you're solving gigantic problems underneath the barbell of how do I stay alive without getting crushed? Like waking up and going for a morning walk, like when you put all the pieces together, like the most important thing is just being strong. And then from there, it's like, get out of your house and be active. If you could do like 2 things, 3 things, eat protein, go outside and move and be strong, you don't that's like the culmination of 3 years of talking to every scientist that I could ever imagine talking to, and everything else is like a tiny offshoot of those. I mean, even when we talk about hypertrophy, like building muscle and being strong and myofibrillar hypertrophy is the most important thing, and everything else is like, yeah, it's like a reality, like it exists. Like when it comes to eating, like eat protein. Like if you eat your daily allotment of protein, for most people it's going to be really challenging to eat other things because they're not used to eating their body weight in chicken breasts or whatever it is. Like get your protein and a lot of stuff figures itself out. And then like going outside, walking, just getting outside, vitamin D, being out in nature, like those three things are like, it's all, it's not that I've stopped listening and stopped learning. It's that when you combine all these radical conversations and you're putting out and like we do 2 shows a week now, like I'm talking for 3 hours a week to people that are like really intelligent about what they do, and you start hearing like these same messages over and over again. And then I like go to even like Galpin's like Instagram account, and he's got this like one tiny little study, and I'm like, dude, come on, you know the truth here. Like that study's cool, it's great, but like we don't need to worry about so many little things. And like dude, I feel like I'm in a way like it's like the most freeing thing for so much of this is like taking those 3 core principle things, like eat protein, go outside, and be strong. And if you could do those things, like a lot of stuff just happens. A lot of stuff like starts massaging its way into like a really good, healthy life. And that's really where like a lot of the rub of like I have a podcast, and I don't listen to many podcasts anymore because like I really like the simplicity of those concepts that like continually come up, and like the importance of those just like really basic concepts. And it, to me, of somebody that you know, for the same reason like Bryan was the guy that did all the programming, like you guys love that sciencey side of things, and having like understanding like the really big buckets creates a lot of freedom for me to just not have to worry about many things, of like, let's just go play, let's just get after it and have as much fun, like spend as much time outside as possible, be as like just outdoors as you could possibly be, and lift weights. Like I dude, lifting weights is so radical, and it's so important, and it's so much fun. I just wish more people did it.
Totally,
like
dude. I love those. I love those 3 pillars of health and fitness: lift weights, get outside, eat protein. And I actually think that the cool thing about those 3 pillars is that if you follow any resistance training pursuit, then you're probably getting some form of the 3 of those at some different level. And the way in which you go outside, the way in which you lift weights, and the way in which you use carbs and fat around that designated number of protein is kind of the nuance that we love discussing.
Totally.
And figuring out the best ways to do it. But overall, like 100% right. I mean, using evidence, which is something that I love, obviously, you know, they've come out with studies in the last couple of years that you can maintain muscle mass and strength on somewhere between 1/9 and 1/3 of the current volume that you use. So for somebody doing like 15 sets of a given muscle group a week, you could do between 1 and 3 sets a week and literally lose nothing. So you're putting in like exponentially more time for what might be like an even more diminishing return on the asymptotal graph. So I think that your philosophy, like especially once you've built it, it's really easy to maintain it. And I think that that's important to keep in mind too, because it may not be as easy for someone to build the mecha as it is for them to maintain the mecha once it's built.
Yeah, I think also, dude, like how many, like all 3 of us started training when we were like 13, 14 years old. Do you know anybody that's still doing this like professionally that started when they were 26? No, like it's really sad to say, but that game is almost over. Like, it's really hard to get a passion at 26 years old that you're like really going to go chase down for the rest of your life. Like, I think Noble put that like documentary out about the girls, Tia, Brooke Wells, and someone else. I thought it was like really good. Only because, I mean, it was a great documentary and like it was really well done, but like the most important thing was like the whole point of it was like this is just who we are. Like when like what's the first thing you guys are like, Bryan, when the pandemic hits, you build a gym in your basement. Like,
Yep.
I stopped going to the gym completely and started actually training in my garage, which I had a gym in there. Like, the people that are going to get it done, they're going to get it done. And I think that is like, we're very lucky that we found this thing. 24 years is going to be 44 years one day. Like, and along that path of like the soul searching of like figuring out why it's important to you. Like, I think you guys are so rad just because you guys do what's important to you. Like, it's really funny when I see when I see you like the earn your rep thing, and I look at it and I go, are you fucking crazy? You think I give a shit about each rep? Like, I look at it and I'm like, are you fucking Looney Tune? I got things to do. But it's like your thing. It's so rad. Like, let's put 225 on the bar, squat it a bunch of times, go home. Like, or go in the kitchen, which is right there. But like, you have to find your way. And more important than all of it is like, no matter how hard it is, no matter how much time you have to fight for, like, having kids throws a wrench into your training in a way that's like really, really challenging. Like, I wake up at 5:30 in the morning just so I can like guarantee that I'm going to have some time in the morning to go lift some weights every single day. Like, the people that are going to do it are going to go do it. We're going to figure out a way. And it's really important to go on that journey to just like figure out why it matters to you. Like, I think that's the coolest part about what all three of us have done over the years of like, there's different stages and it's always meant different things, whether it was girls or CrossFit or finding about business or like connecting with people, whatever it is. Like, it takes the lens in which you view a barbell is going to change, hopefully hundreds and hundreds of times. But if you just keep looking, you'll find the answer to like what keeps you coming back.
Totally. No, I love all of that, dude. You went out a little bit on the video and audio, so I think I missed what you said at the end. Hopefully
it was enlightening as shit. It was super enlightening.
I think I was gonna say deep thoughts with AV. So we've
right?
we've come full circle. We've all realized how important the barbell is in our life. We've talked about some of the names and the methodologies that have been super important to us. And we've come to the conclusion that we're all still here because it's a priority for us. And we show up every day and we do the damn thing. And I personally am thankful for all of the methodologies and all of the people that have provided me insight along the way, because I wouldn't be in a position to own my rep if it wasn't for all of the lessons I learned along the way.
Right? I hope that takes off so much and you have like thousands of people tagging you. I would be like, what are you guys doing? Just lift weights. So rad.
Excellent. Well, AV, we're coming up on about an hour here, so why don't you tell the people a little bit more where they can find all things Anders Varner and where to hear what you have going on.
You ready for the whole thing? I'm Anders Varner at Anders Varner. We're Barbell Shrugged at Barbell_Shrugged. Every Monday and Wednesday, new podcast coming out. Head over to barbellshrugged.com/dieseldad, where all the dads are getting strong, lean, and athletic without sacrificing family, fatherhood, or fitness. And then we actually have 3 programs on the shelves at Walmart in San Diego, LA, Palm Springs, and Vegas. So if you're in that area, go check out the pharmacy. We're on the shelves.
Bam.
That's the
Thanks
whole
for coming
thing.
on, dude. That's beautiful. I love it's like it is an elevator speech. I feel like I was in an elevator with you and I was getting knowledge dropped on me before the elevator door opened.
Everybody knows where to go now.
Thanks for the time, dude. It's always good connecting.
Yeah, this is rad.
Yeah,
I'm so
awesome
stoked you guys have a
up.
podcast.
Oh, thank you. It was
I've
awesome.
been waiting
both
for
of you
one of you two to have one.
We did it together. There you go.
Awesome. Thanks, AV.
All right, brother. Catch you, man.
Thank you so much for listening to Eat, Train, Prosper. If you found this episode valuable, please subscribe or share us with your friends. You can find more from Aaron at strakernutritionco.com and more from Bryan at evolvedtrainingsystems.com. Talk to you guys next time.